G'day, Mike from Aussie Mike's Bees. Unfortunately bringing another update on the Varroa incursion in New South Wales, Australia. I just got an email through this afternoon, it's the 29th of November, and there's been another discovery outside the existing red zones. So it was in a purple zone, and so that's created a new red zone in that area. It does overlap other red zones, so it's not too bad, and the purple zone is doing its function. Anyway, I'll stop talking here and I'll take you over to the screen and we'll look at what I got this afternoon. Alright, as of today, the beekeeper update: red zone expanded for new Varroa detection near Lochinvar on the 29th of November 2022. Okay, well, I'll just go through this. The New South Wales DPI are continuing their efforts in response to the Varroa mite incursion, confirmed as Varroa destructor, found in biosecurity surveillance hives in the Port of Newcastle. That's stuff we already know. DPI wants to share our continued appreciation to beekeepers across the state, and particularly those affected by the red eradication and purple notification emergency zones. So those people that have lost all their hives and those people that can't move and they've got to do lots of surveillance. We recognise that this emergency response has significant impacts on your business and well-being. We strongly encourage you to reach out for support, of course. Now, the big news: red zone expanded. The DPI's Varroa mite tracing and surveillance work has confirmed a new detection of Varroa mite at a property in Lochinvar in the Hunter region. This detection brings the total number of infested premises to 104. This new detection is beyond the boundary of the eradication zone and has not been traced to an existing infested premises within the eradication zone. So that's suggesting it's not been transported, and at this stage it would be transported illegally from the red zone. It requires an expansion of the current red zone from its borders near Stanhope and Maitland, and a new emergency order has been made. Next steps. Tracing is continuing in order to identify if there are any links to infested premises. The detection demonstrates the importance of continued surveillance efforts in the purple zone and the importance of the DPI's cooperation with the bee industry and follow up and investigate all links to and from infested premises. DPI has updated the emergency order to include the new infested premises, the IP, and ensure all necessary restrictions are in place. DPI is moving very quickly to treat the infestation and eradicate the hives at the IP. Does this mean there may be more cases? Good question. The purple zone was established to enable the response to delimit the spread of the Varroa mite from the infested sites, and our surveillance efforts to date have and continue to provide the response a high level of confidence in containment. So they're still saying they're confident. Now, just a note on that: I haven't done an update for quite a long time, and mainly because there's been nothing to report. They've been working on eradication and already moved on, as I've said in previous videos. They've moved on to the baiting program that will continue for a period of 12 months to catch those swarms, or eradicate, not catch, eradicate the swarms and any unreported hives. And at this stage they would be illegal hives that are out there. So they're still confident at this stage. Okay, the response has carried out the surveillance on more than 10,000 hives in the purple zone to date. That's pretty good. Across the state, the response staff have surveyed almost 30,000 hives with no Varroa mite detection. That's good news. Through the approved hive movement program in the general emergency zone, the blue zone, beekeepers have tested over 85,000 hives. I can attest to that, been doing it myself. This program has been extended where beekeepers are now required to carry out mandatory alcohol wash surveillance at a minimum of every 16 weeks. I think I reported that last time. So that's an upgrade in the requirement from twice a year previously for sugar shakes or alcohol wash, any mite surveillance method. Now alcohol washes are the preferred, and so now from twice a year to at least every 16 weeks. The cooperation of the industry and the community is vital in helping the response achieve the goal of eradication. So for more information, there's that page for the DPI, the usual well-being stuff for anyone getting down in the dumps about that, and I would not blame them at all. I've met some of these people and had some serious conversations with these guys. I'm going to click on this link, and this brings us to the current state of the emergency response, and it's mostly questions here: what to do in a swarm, reimbursement, we've talked about that before, frequently asked, hive movement, what beekeepers should do, and what I want to do is get to the current map, which is here. And the area we're focusing on is again around the Newcastle area where it all began. So I'll zoom in and get down to where this latest outbreak is. So this is mainly around, that's Newcastle, and it all began in this basic area around Newcastle to the slightly north of Newcastle. Now this latest red zone is now where I'm circling just there. So it's sort of nestled in between an existing one here and this whole mess of them over to the east. So this section here, I guess zeroing in even further. So well within the existing purple zone, and it was a purple zone detection. So that is the current zone. So the state of the case for the whole state has not changed otherwise, and it's just expanded that red zone within the existing heavily infested area. So I guess we're stuck with waiting to see what goes on there, but they will be full on eradicating everything in that new 10k zone and then carrying on with the surveillance. I have no doubt that they will want more people doing surveillance checks in and around that area right now. Now, just while I'm doing this particular update, I thought I'd fill you in with the official word on what they're calling the Wild European Honeybee Management Program. So that's the baiting program that's going on right now throughout the current red zones, and will also include this new red zone once they've eradicated all of the managed hives within that area. So come on over to this page. So this is again Department of Primary Industries, the DPI. Oh. And so this is the Wild European Honeybee Management Program. I would always have called them feral bees. Same thing in this case. So following on from the euthanasia and destruction of all of those hives, the next phase was the eradication in wild hives in the red zone. Let's see. Euthanasia of the wild is completed using the commonly fipronil. Look, we've talked about fipronil before, and they're putting bait stations within that 10k red zone, spaced apart. Let's see. They're talking about how the program's been rolling out. I don't need to go into detail of the process of rolling out. Suffice to say, they're rolling it out in all of the red zones. So what's the most important thing? They do talk about fipronil a bit. There's a Q&A. I'll get down to that shortly. So what actions do you need to take? Well, just keep an eye out for signage and keep your bees away. Well, that's a silly thing to say. They've got a 2-kilometre buffer between the bait stations and the purple zone where you can still have bees. So hopefully you don't have bees right on the edge of the 2K buffer, that you've got them in a bit. So there is some risk to beekeepers with bees in the purple zone that are close within that 2K, because your bees could travel, as we know, up to 5 kilometres. I'm thinking at this time of year it's full on flow time. Your bees are only going to be feeding within a few hundred metres of their hive, which is a good thing, certainly less than that 2 kilometres, plus however further in from the boundary you are. Okay, production of and sale of honey, anything in that red zone, banned. Everything's got to be gone. You just bearing in mind, you could have harvested, but anything that was going to be anything. This is talking about the baiting program. So from now on, compared to pre-eradication, you were allowed to harvest your honey and consume it, bottle it, consume it, sell it, do whatever. But now this is the baiting phase. So any honey, any risk of your bees coming into contact with fipronil, you can't sell that honey or consume it. It's no good. Right. So I'll read it out. DPI has permitted to use fipronil to euthanize wild European honeybee under that permit from the authority. Without any managed beehives within the eradication zone, there won't be any honey production in the area. However, it should be noted that under the permit, all hive products, including honey and wax, must be destroyed and not be consumed by humans or animals. Hive products must not be made available for sale or export as a raw or processed product. So that's just the detail on the permit. Logically, we shouldn't have any honey or bee products in that zone now anyway, and that's the level that the authority will go to. They're saying now it's got to be destroyed. And there's a bit on native bees. I think we've pretty much established that native bees are fairly well protected. So they're taking mitigation against the native bees being exposed to fipronil. The stations are being monitored. They've been designed in a way to keep native and other honey eaters out, or nectar feeders. So the odds of the native bee population being affected is very low. Not zero, but very low. So this is the Q&A that I wanted to get to. Right, so they're defining wild European bees. So they're in hollows and enclosed spaces. We know what they are. How do wild honeybees happen? Well, swarms. How wild honeybees removed from the eradication emergency zone. This is it. European honeybees in the will be euthanized with a sweet liquid bait containing extremely low concentration of fipronil insecticide. Fipronil is a proven and effective method of depopulating an area of European honeybees. And we talked last time about how they're attracting bees to the stations by using warmed up honey and wax, and that will be a very strong enticement because sugar water alone won't do the trick if there's plenty of spring feed around, which there is. So that warmed up honey and wax is an attractant. Legally in New South Wales, we are banned from feeding honey to bees. So the law is still in place, even though we want to kill these bees. We're not allowed to feed honey to bees for the risk of spreading AFB and other possible diseases. So it seems odd, but the law is the law, and they're not going to bend it in this case. So they're using the warmed up honey and melted wax as an attractant, but not accessible, if that makes sense. So there you go. Governments, eh? Why do we need to kill wild bees to remove them from the eradication zone? Attracting and euthanizing wild bees using bait stations is the most practical way to keep the eradication zone free of wild European bees for the required time frame, that 1 year. Unfortunately, there is no other practical way to find and remove wild bees. What is fipronil? Fipronil insecticide kills insects including bees by affecting their nervous system. It is used in over 200 registered products in Australia, including home products for flea and tick treatments on pet dogs and cats, home and commercial products for controlling termites, cockroaches, ants in houses and lawns, commercial products for control of plague locusts, fruit flies and other insect pests in crops such as bananas, broccoli, cabbages, cotton, potatoes, grapes, sugarcane, rice, mushrooms, canola and sorghum. So it's pretty extensively used. The concentration of fipronil in the bait station is far lower than the concentration used in current home and garden products in Australia. For example, one of the flea treatments for dogs and cats with the lowest concentration of fipronil is 0.42 grams of fipronil per kilogram of product. 0.42 grams per kilogram. DPI baiting stations will contain a mixture that only has 0.01 gram per litre. So 1 litre is approximately a kilo. It's sugar syrup, so it's a bit heavier than a kilo. Might be 1.2, depending on the density. So 0.01 gram per litre of sugar syrup. Approximately 42 times weaker than the fipronil flea treatment product. At very low rates, fipronil is highly toxic to both European honeybees and native bees. At the permitted rate, bees will need to feed on the fipronil in the bait stations multiple times before they are affected by the poison. Now, this is another protection mechanism for the native bees because they need multiple feedings to be affected, and they're being sort of guarded against being allowed into the bait station in the first place. The odds are that they're not going to get poisoned. Is fipronil safe for humans, animals and the environment? The Australian Pesticides and Vet Medicines Authority is the independent federal government agency responsible for determining the safety of fipronil. Its use for European honeybee euthanasia complies with strict conditions set out by the department or the authority to ensure safety for operators, future beekeeping activities, non-target insects, birds and animals, people and children and the environment. The fipronil bait stations are signposted and placed in areas with restricted access. Important to know, most of the time they will only contain a sweet liquid for the attracting stage. Fipronil is only added at the end of this period and removed once the bees have finished feeding. So we've mentioned that before. There'll be someone monitoring it. It'll be dosed with fipronil for a few hours of that day, and when the bees have stopped coming to it for that day, it'll be swapped back out for syrup. DPI will inform publicly prior to the use of fipronil in your local area, so there won't be any surprises. Everyone's going to be notified. What is the risk of for non-target? Good question. So the authority has determined the risk to humans, pets, livestock, wildlife is very low due to the very low concentration of fipronil insecticide in the base station solution. Risk to non-target insects is also low due to the combination of permit requirements, the attractant used, bait station design and behaviour of European honeybees. Bait stations are designed to exclude off-target animals such as birds or reptiles and crawling insects. If off-target animals, birds or insects are observed entering a bait station, this operation is suspended and a risk assessment undertaken to determine if the baiting will continue at that location. How long after the bee takes the fipronil back to the hive before the hive dies? Several studies have shown that the colony death peaks within 1 to 2 days, but may take 14 days to complete depopulation of a wild hive. Okay. How is DPI managing the risk to managed bees outside the eradication zone? So this is in the purple zone. There will be a minimum 2 kilometre buffer area between the bait stations and the purple surveillance emergency zone to reduce the risk of European honeybees from outside the eradication zone interacting with the bait stations. So yeah, we talked about that a bit earlier. How will we know if the fipronil is working? Yes. The effect of fipronil on the numbers of the wild European honeybees will be closely monitored. Over the duration of the management program, the numbers of wild honeybees inside the eradication flight will drop, indicating the fipronil is working as expected. So it's all surveillance, it's just watching the numbers. That's why they just keep baiting for a whole year. Most of the time it's sugar syrup, and after bait has been taken, the bees get used to using that bait station, then they swap in the fipronil and keep it there for that day, then remove it at the end of the feeding session, come back the next day, do the same, and each time they're monitoring how many have come back. Now, so the department is still very confident that they will succeed despite this new outbreak. The program they've set forth, it's locked in, it's not changing. So at this stage, I'm very hopeful that their confidence is well placed, and that at the end of 12 months, or at the least by the end of the 3-year period, hopefully sooner, they will declare Australia once again Varroa mite free. Something to look forward to. It's going to be a tough time still. It's a tough time for many. One of my subscribers mentioned that he is not giving up. He's found a location outside the red and purple zone at a relative's property, and he's keen to keep beekeeping. I encourage that enthusiasm. I've offered to provide him with one of the swarms I've been catching this year, and when it's built up and he's ready to move, he'll give me a call and I'll take it up there. When or if that happens, I'll let you all know how it goes. Thanks for watching again. Not great news, but let's stay positive, Australians, especially those beekeepers in New South Wales. This is Mike from Aussie Mike's Bees, where beekeeping is an obsession. Cheers.